2013. Would like to preface our meeting with saying a happy birthday to Jeff. I believe you turned 16 and never been kissed. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. You hit it.
That's you. Okay. We have 4 items that we will be looking at. Number 1 is Courthouse HVAC Renovation Project Bid Award, and that will be presented by Carson Fisher.
You want, Mr. Chairman, you want approval of the
Approve
agenda?
agenda.
Oh,
So move.
thank you for the correction. All those in favor, will you raise your right hand? Thank you.
Chairman Taylor, members of the board, we were finally able to open bids yesterday for the HVAC renovation project for the courthouse. I believe you've been able to get a copy of the bid certification from CBSA Architects. 3 bidders submitted bids. Bids ranged from a low of $1,622,802, which is a base bid of $474, plus 7 alternates, to a high of $1,888,300. Bids were checked out by both CBSA and McKimmon Creed, who is our mechanical engineer, and everything appears to be in order with those bids. Obviously, the dilemma that we're in is money that we've got available for the project. And I believe the agenda abstract indicates that we've got just a little bit less than $1.1 million available. We've had a lot of discussion about this between the manager, finance director, myself, Keith Ferris, associate engineer, and of course we've been talking to our consultants too, and we are at a position where we feel like that the project warrants moving forward with it. Obviously, it's ended up being more expensive than what we anticipated, and we feel like that since beginning this process several years ago that probably big cost items in this have included a very compressed and very tight, very rigid time schedule to be able to get the work done, and simply the complexity of the project. I don't know that it's necessarily anything that is overly technically complex, but where they've got to do the work, how they've got to do it, and within the time schedule is what's really driving this cost. So, you know, while we had estimated about $1.1 million for the project, obviously, after going through 2 bid openings, you know, it looks like what we had anticipated to be $1.1 million is closer to $1.6 million. And so what we were going to recommend after our discussion was that we award the project to Triangle Contractors here in Morganton for $1,622,802, which includes all alternates, and ask that the board appropriate $625,000 additional dollars. And Paul, I assume this would be from fund balance, is that correct? To be able to complete the project. Now, if you add those numbers together, it will come up more than the total project amount. We do have a contract with McKimmon Creed for $98,600. We've already paid well, I'm going to write those numbers. We've already paid them $67,510, and if you take away the $1,092,490 that we've got available that was reappropriated from last year or is to be reappropriated from last year. That leaves you $561,402. One of the things that we've been involved with as far as discussions also is because of the fact that this is going to have to be done primarily over a 3-week period, September 30th until October 20th. The manager, Keith Ferris, were in discussion with the judges, and they were in agreement to basically shutting the second floor down and not holding court during those times. So that allows us to be able to get in there and do the work that needs to be done on the second floor during that time. But there's work on the first floor too. So what Triangle has submitted is that they're going to actually work 2 shifts during those 3 weeks to try to get the work done. So labor cost, as you can see, is definitely an impact on this project. And for that reason, we're going to have somebody there after hours to be sure that the contractor is in the areas that he needs to be working, does not get into other things that he does not need to be into. There was some discussion about using a deputy for that, but we've also had some discussion most recently about taking one of our maintenance employees and actually rescheduling their time so that they could be there, and then that way they would have the keys to doors. They would be familiar with the building, know how to help the contractor much better than what a deputy would. And then we talked about using some additional dollars here to actually employ a temporary employee to fill in for that maintenance person during that roughly 3-week, 4-week period that person's going to be needed for that second shift work. So we, in the other, there's still money left over that we're asking for, and I will tell you that the architect and engineer did build $100,000 contingency into the base bid of this project. So the $1,622,802 already includes $100,000 of general contingency. What that means is when we run across things that we didn't anticipate, things that we haven't been able to see that won't be seen until we start tearing things apart, then we've got $100,000 already built into it to be able to do some of those unforeseen things. Let me just go back in time a little bit and talk about the Foothills Higher Education building that was done by this board about 5.5 years ago. That was the very first project that I was involved with when I came here. Contracts had already been awarded, and a contractor was getting ready to get started. That was well over a $9 million project. And I believe we ended up completing that project only $10,000 over budget, which was, I thought, quite well for a project that size, but it was also completed on time. My point was that the same architects, in their wisdom, put in $500,000 contingency in that project, and we spent almost every bit of it. You just don't know until you start getting into something what you're going to run into on a renovation project. So, you know, that's important. So we're, again, emphasizing or re-emphasizing, reiterating, we're asking the board to award the contract to Triangle Construction for the $1,622,802, reappropriating the
$1,092,490.
Correct, thank you. And then appropriating $625,000 of fund balance to be able to complete the project in its entirety. So I'll be quiet and let the board ask some questions because I know you probably have some.
Okay. Thank you, Carson. Question from the commissioners?
Carson, how long have you known that this project is going to cost that much?
Not until we took the bids.
What's the difference between the one that's going in the courthouse and the one you installed in the health building over there? Health resources, human resource building.
I'm not sure that I can explain all the details in terms of what it is. Obviously, we were able to work during the day with workers still at their desk at HRC because of our relationship with the judges and the court system. We know that interruptions, sound, construction noise is a problem for what they're conducting during the day. And I think that all in all, that's probably the biggest difference between this project and the HRC. While there are some similarities, I think that, and Keith, if I might be able to ask you to kind of add to this if I don't speak to it directly, but there's actually, and you might want to come up here so you can be heard on the mic, but there's a lot more of the work that's existing that's been built on the inside of the building. You know, typically a lot of heating and air conditioning is on the outside of the building. That's not the case with the existing courthouse. And so you're going to be doing a lot of demolition on the inside. Plus, there's a lot of ductwork that has to be replaced that we didn't do a lot of replacement of ductwork at HRC, did we?
Commissioner Carroll, this is going to be a total HVAC change-out. Everything is going to be brand new. All the ductwork, all the diffusers, all the equipment, everything is going to be brand new. Whereas at the Human Resource Center, we only changed out the front end, the chiller and the air handler. We didn't get into any of the ductwork, anything downstairs. It was all done on the front end of the system instead of the whole thing. So what we're going to have when we get done at the courthouse is a completely new system that should take us for the next 20 years and actually control that building. It's something we've never had in the past. But that's a big driving force on how much this was going to cost compared to what the Human Resource Center was.
Well, that's true, but why couldn't you understand that when this was first brought up? We knew all that work. I suppose you knew then that all that work had to be done. So my question is, why wasn't it presented to the commissioners in that vein there as opposed to it's just another HVAC?
Well, let me say a little bit too. We obviously have been involved with this for some time, and I think that even though my specialty is not mechanical and electrical, Keith is probably more well-versed, obviously, on mechanical and electrical than I am, but I think that we found as we went through the design process and the scoping process with our engineers that there was just a lot more to it than what even Keith had anticipated. And again, while we knew that the schedules were going to be tight, we did not anticipate as tight a time schedule as what we've been given to work with. So again, it's just a complex project, and obviously the cost estimates dictate that, and I'll let Keith add to that.
Commissioner Carroll, to answer your question, I actually used two different formulas, and both formulas come from what architects and engineers use under normal circumstances. And the main one was that if you'll remember during your first term, we had talked about doing an $11 million upfit to the courthouse. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. So typically the plumbing, the mechanical, which is air conditioning, and the electrical each add up to 10% of a total construction cost. So if you took $11 million and said 10% of that for the HVAC, that's 1.1 million. That's where that come from. And there's the second way you can do it is you can look at so many dollars per ton. So we're going to have a little more tonnage in air conditioning and cooling and heating than what we have currently. So if you looked at $5,000 a ton, we come out to about the same amount of money. So looking at those two things is where I estimated the $1.1 million. Now those are tried and true type scenarios. The original plan was to try to work on it while court was going on because we have nowhere else to go. When we got into that, the judges sort of dictated, no, we don't really look for that to happen because we can't hold jury trials and that kind of thing. So what we want to do is reschedule to different places inside the complex and hold maybe split dockets and that kind of thing, but then that shortened the amount of time that we had to actually install this system. There's some work that can be done prior to and after that 3-week window, but when you start looking at a 3-week window to get it done, and we had conversations with the sheriff and the manager and the judges, and to take court away from the courthouse was going to be a security nightmare and everything else. So the dollar amounts was estimated off of a cost from like 2008, a projected $11 million upfit. And we see now that didn't, we've had some increases, and that's where we were sort of surprised at this bid when we opened it, but that's where that all come about. That's how it come about, and that's where the dollar amounts come from.
Well, you went back in time. Let's go back in time.
Okay.
Is my memory correct? Wasn't that chiller replaced over there a few years ago, or either there was allocated funds to do so?
No, we did replace the chiller in 2008 with a used chiller, knowing, you know, that was when we were doing the committees and the subcommittees and the subcommittees and all that good stuff. You remember? So when the chiller broke, we had to put the front end of it back on. We didn't have a choice, so we bought a used unit, knowing that going forward we were going to be doing this. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, we did, and we're going to continue to use that chiller. We're not replacing it. Okay, it's still going to handle the jail and do part of the work. We're going to replace all the equipment that is in front of it.
How much that chiller cost? I remember a number, but I don't know.
$84,000 total. I think installed was like $84,000.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with a question?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Keith, what kind of problems do we have with day-to-day operations over there now? What kind of problems do we encounter with the current system? Is it economical, the current system? How long has the current system been in? I know we wanted to change it for certain reasons, so give me a little bit more history and what it's costing us.
The courthouse was built, Commissioner Carswell, in 1975. Because when you start putting equipment in, it's a year before you occupy. You understand? Okay, so that equipment is that old. It's original, and it was built in place. So we started talking about this 2005, 2006, because you have hand control. I literally check the temperature every morning in the courthouse and the clerk's office, and have ever since I've been here, and tried to make adjustments to it if there's any to be done, okay, to keep these folks halfway comfortable. Because in 1981, that system was butchered, basically butchered. Anybody you talk to will tell you that. So we've been handling that for the last 10 years, since I've been here, by hand, okay? Now, the thing I told the manager when I talked to him about this was, I have no plan as to what to do when it breaks. And you're talking about 40-year-old equipment, original equipment. It never been replaced, nothing but the chiller that Commissioner Carroll was talking about. So we have ductwork in that building right now. You talked about problem. That is ductboard. Now, ductboard is nothing more than a piece of 1-inch insulation that you cut and fold together. And that's what was put in it when it was built. So we have no way to control any type of humidity. We have no way of changing the temperature except for actually turning stuff on and off by hand. That's all you can do. And so the big thing about it is, Commissioner Carswell, if it breaks, I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know what we're gonna do, because it's not like at the Human Resource Center when the chiller was gonna fail, we could have rented one, set it outside. Can't do that over here. So I don't have a plan of action if this fails, and we've been talking about it so long now that the string that it was hanging on is pulled pretty tight. And that's the only way I know to describe it for you. The folks that's housed in this building, literally, I start them out as cold as I can get them in the morning, so that by 9:30, when everybody shows up, and there's 10,000 plus people come through this facility every week. I mean, and that's not even an exaggeration. But I started out as cool as I can get it in the mornings, because at 9:30, when the crowd comes in, I start getting calls from judges saying I'm hot. Can you do anything? And that's almost a day-to-day event that happens. And these are good folks. They don't give me a hard time, but there's just nothing that we can do to really help them out. Now, the system still runs, okay? But I don't recommend waiting until it breaks to try to do something, because at that point, if you think this is expensive now, I would estimate if we wait till it breaks, I'd be afraid to say what it'd cost. Because at that point, you're going to have to find a place to hold court, the whole 9 yards. So that was my big concern when I talked to the manager about, I lose sleep at night trying to figure out what we're going to do if this thing goes down. And so, even though I underestimated how much it was going to cost, I might have been optimistic, but I was taking numbers that we had used in 2007 and 2008 and trying to say, okay, maybe we can do it with that. But I think that's the best way I can answer your question. We have, I will tell you this, and you can look this up. Don't take my word for it if you don't want to, but we have dry type transformers that supply the electrical power to this building that are the same age as the building. And average life to them, 18 to 20 years. So we've went that far past their average lifespan and are hoping they'll continue. And they're in this project, some of that's going to be changed out. So we also included that.
So if we take a proactive approach now to this preventive maintenance and put the new system in, we're looking at a good 20.
You should.
You should.
Well, here's the thing about this system, Commissioner. We have an opportunity right here to where nobody else will ever have to do this again. Now, that's a pretty big statement, but what we're going to put in is individual units. Each courtroom will have its own system where you don't have that now. See, any change I make controls the whole courthouse. No matter what I do, it's all floors of the courthouse. So when we finish with this, we will have control in each courtroom. All the different areas in the courthouse will have control. And what will happen is, at the end of the lifespan of the units we put in, you can replace them one at a time. Okay? And none of these units are in the large tonnage. We're looking at 10-ton, 15-ton units. Now, that's cooling capacity, not weight. So you're talking 10 to 15, $20,000 per unit rather than 1.6 million to try to do something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we've actually tried to look at this for people going forward in the future, that they won't have to do this. And also to give the judges and the court, when they throw 300 people in courtroom 2 and you have one system, there's absolutely nothing I can do. But they always call me and want me to do something. In this system, we're going to try to take that into account. We've taken it into account before we install it. Okay, so big project, a lot of money. It's one more step in the renovation of this building that we can't get out of. Okay, because we've been doing some stuff to it. But I can tell you, I have no idea what we'll do if it breaks, the one we have. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. The history, pretty much dictates that we're looking at an old unit, it's been there forever, and
Yes.
the possibility, it's not broke, it's still running, but it could break down tomorrow.
That's
And
right.
this is an investment that, obviously it's caught us by surprise when you're looking at another $500,000. And you made your estimate based on the knowledge that you had, and I don't charge you for that,
Right.
because everything changes. And I think it's safe to say that building expenses or repair work expenses are gonna go up in the future. We're
Absolutely.
at that level, and it's only gonna cost us more if we wait much longer. So, no, thank you. I think you answered me well.
Let me add this to you, to answer that question too. There's some aesthetic stuff that has to take place in here that will make the courtrooms even look better, and the appearance of the courtrooms and the courthouse will also be improved during this project. Because we have to do that to change out all that ductwork and stuff. We've had to tear out ceilings and that kind of stuff. So not only will we have a more efficient, because that's what the manager asked us when we started talking about, make sure it's the most efficient system, which we have taken that into account. But we're also going to be replacing a lot of the ceilings in two of the courtrooms. We're going to replace all the ceilings in two of the courtrooms, and downstairs in the clerk's area. It'll actually give them a better workplace to work in and give us more control over spreading the air out over these areas where, you got to realize 40 years ago, they had hand ad machines. They didn't have computers and printers and copiers, and now we've stuck all that in these rooms, and all that generates heat, and we haven't done anything to try to combat that additional latent load. So this will help with that, because we'll be able to spread the air out over the areas where right now it's not. Okay?
If a question or two, I guess, Paul, first one's to you. What's that $500,000 do to our fund balance, and where does that put us?
Sort of the unknown in this is, we're in a revow year. And as Danny had alluded to earlier, last year, the property tax collections came in way above what our budget number was. So, obviously, that's about 1% on the fund balance number, or 1 cent on the tax rate number. And so, but at this point in time, I couldn't tell you at the end of the year how the property tax collection is going to be, because we're still dealing with an estimated tax base. So.
But if you took the 1.1 was encumbered from last year's budget, correct?
Yeah.
So, and this 500,000 is going to come out of this year's budget. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I guess the next question, I don't know who needs to answer this. How can we be 55% off when we do a bid and we're getting caught? And I think, if I might speak for the board, and I feel Jack's questions too, when we, as a board, look at a project and you tell it's 1.1 and we okay that project, and you come like you have this time, and a budget just gets blown out, I won't say the word, but it gets blown to pieces because we somehow or another we're not doing a good enough job on the end. And then in answering that question, we put new elevators in there. We overcooled the Lazarus building. It ended up with mildew problems, and it cost us again and again and again. So if you're telling me you're overcooling, and we're going to experience that same problem. But I guess what happens? What would we gain if we let the bids?
I don't think so. And, I certainly appreciate the position that the board is in. We as staff members don't like to come to the board and have to ask for additional money for something like this. Again, I think as Commissioner Carroll indicated, we used the best knowledge that we had. Would I wish that we had have asked for $500,000 more? Yes. It kind of goes back to some of that discussion that we had not too long ago. We've been in a very tight budget situation over the last several years. We've really tried to be extremely conservative about the numbers that we bring to you so that we don't have this situation. But, when you've got a down economy like this, when we have to go through 2 bids to get 3 bids on $1 million project, I think that's telling that it's more than just cost alone. You don't have the contractors out there that you had 5 or 6 years ago. We had to rebid the generator replacement at the HRC twice before we got enough bids. That was a $125,000 project. You know, unfortunately, in this business, when I was in consulting work, the one thing that my boss taught me then is you don't want to be, as the consultant, the low bidder on the project, meaning your estimate was underneath everybody else's. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes. We miss it. We don't like it, but we also are dealing with a system that has not been maintained like it should have been in the past. And I think Keith will tell you that ever since he's been here for almost 10 years, there's been problems with hot spots and cool spots in the building. So, you know, even with the original design, even though we've gotten twice the useful life out of it that we probably should have, there's been a need well before now to get this work done. And I think that because of the fact that we still only got 3 bidders this time, we could have opened with 1 bid. Luckily, we got 3. At least there was a little bit of competition. But when you don't have a lot of competition and you have a complex problem, then that's going to drive the prices. And these prices are not that far apart. They're really fairly close together for the project itself. So, you know, again, I understand the feelings of the board. We don't like to come to you to ask that, but we've also tried to be very conservative, and I guess we'll just have to start taking our conservative hats off, like I said before, and being a little more, we don't want to scare you off initially. We want to be as close to the money as we can, but again, we're human. We did the best we could.
Let me ask you a question that can be answered later. Does this board need to let bids before we decide to do a project? Because we get hung in the middle of these projects, and it costs so much more money, and we don't have that money budgeted. And I just wonder if we're not doing something, if there's some way we can, and I'm taking more time than the chair ought to. I ought to let these people ask questions, but it really concerns me that we're looking at a 55% increase to do a job that seems high even at $1.1 million. And it's an absorbent amount of money. And the other question, and I'm going to shut up, but the other question would be, did somebody look at those? Are we being charged absorbent numbers for labor, for example?
I don't know that we've got prices broken down to laborers. It's basically items of work that need to be done. Contractor indicates, you know, cost of materials and labor included in there. It's not broken out. So typically construction contracts are not, unless you're going to do it on time and materials, and this was not a time and materials job. And, you know, if I may be wrong, and I know that certainly the percentage that we're over is a big concern. And again, you know, I hate to come and even ask you for that additional money because we know how critical the project is. Well, we've done a number of projects while I've been here that have been underestimate. And I just mentioned a project that was 9 times this amount that we brought in for less than $10,000 over budget on an almost $10 million project. So I think we've got a very good track record. And again, you know, we don't always get the right information. We don't always give the board the things that we need to. We are doing our best. And, you know, could have we done a better job on this? Yes. Does the work need to be done? Absolutely. Will it cost you more if you decide not to do anything at this point? Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't like it any more than anybody else's, but I think what we're looking at a 40-year-old building that we're renovating with people in it. And the higher education center, if you remember that building, we were able to strip that building out pretty easily. There wasn't a matter of ductwork or anything in it. But we're trying to put ductwork back in a building and whatever in an existing building. And I'll just tell you on a smaller project, the renovation I'm doing on the new building, my electrical, what I figured for electrical was about $35,000. And because we had to gut all the present electrical, the electrical probably cost me over $80,000. So when you're messing with an older building and renovating an older building, you're going to run into costs like that. I don't like it any better than anybody else. It's a lot cheaper to build new, but we're renovating something that's already there, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't like the $500,000 more either, but I can see on a smaller project, I'm going to run an easily, what I thought was maybe 400,000, I'm going to run probably 100 and some thousand over that.
Any other question or comment?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John?
Carson, you feel comfortable now with the 100,000 contingency that's built in after we've discussed so much that's wrong?
I feel confident that the architects and the engineers have really studied what needs to be done, and the 100,000 that they've got in there should be adequate. You know, you never know. It's a crapshoot. I'm not much of a gambler. But what I have told the manager and Paul Imes is that, you know, with the 100,000, we'll make the decisions that we need to make to stay within that 100,000 and get a good project out of it. Now, you know, if there's something critical that we find that is not covered by that, I'll be back up here again before you and asking for some more money. But, you know, we're going to do everything within our power to be able to keep that within the budget and less, if that's at all possible.
Well, Carson, if I understand, if we do this contract, we get this job done from 1.6, whatever it is, he's entered the contract as much as we are. He has to complete that job for 1.66, is that correct?
Well, that's true, but, you know, you
Okay.
have some judgment calls within the contract itself in terms of interpretation of plans and things like that. But, you know, Marty Beal, CBSA Architects, is here in the audience. And, you know, both Marty and Martin Boyer with McKim & Creed were involved in the HVAC project. And, you know, they've worked with this board before. They understand what we are looking for, and I certainly feel like they probably have as good an understanding of what needs to be done on this project as anybody does. Now, you know, anytime you bid something, you usually don't have the time to allow for comprehensive understanding of the bids by the contractors, but this project has been out for about 3 weeks now, maybe 3.5 weeks, and so hopefully they have a good understanding. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but yes, it is a contract, but there are some things in interpretation, and you know, we'll look to the architect to look for Burke County's interest in those interpretations, and as long as it's by the law, what's included in there.
Well, to me, excuse me, gentlemen, to me that seems like a one-sided contract. If I find something wrong, I can come back to you, but you can't come back to me and reduce the contract.
Well, not necessarily. Again, it's within the interpretation of the designer and the owner, and if we disagree with him, we can tell him, do the work, you're not getting anything extra for it. It's been done in the past.
That's the only way I feel comfortable voting for this, Mr. Chairman, if we, whatever the price is with the contingency, that's it. I mean, anything over, he eats it. I mean, that wouldn't be fair in the bidding process if somebody sends a low bid in and then they knowingly know that it's going to cost more money, then that bid isn't, to me, worthless.
Right.
I would only vote for this thing, whatever that price is on that piece of paper, and anything extra outside the contingency, he eats it.
That's a good point. Good point.
That's the only way to do business that I know.
Any other questions?
Well, certainly that's, that's the way we approach the contract.
Well, that's the only way I would vote for this.
The only thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is this is gonna have to be done, but we go back more than 5 years ago, we knew this problem existed then. And somebody's gonna have to start doing better planning. And how you do planning is let this board know what the problems are beforehand, and not come in with a bid, like the chairman said, 50% or whatever, what we were presented with, this board was presented with before. So I don't see what choice we have, but I've been before a judge over there in that building because of the problems in the past, and they existed a long time. And there was a look at that building, and this is not going to resolve all the problems in that courthouse building by a long shot, right?
Yeah, we're just talking heating and air conditioning.
You're right. So we know that up front. So if we go down this road now, you might as well face the problem and get it done. Thank you.
Anything else? Chair will entertain a motion.
Chairman, I don't really like it, but I would make the motion that we would, I guess, accept the bid of $1,622,802 and not a cent over that. If it comes to any money over that, the contractor eats it.
Mr. Chairman, in the award, and I just want to ask about this, we're talking about awarding this bid to Triangle Contractors for a bid price of $1,622,802, which covers the project, but we also are asking for the appropriation of an additional $625,000 from fund balance to enable that project to be completed, as well as some of that money, a small amount, would be used so that we could hire a temporary employee in the maintenance department so that their maintenance, the senior staff at maintenance can be there during the night hours when they're working to keep that open and still have enough people in the maintenance department to carry out their function during that short window of time. So
I'll add that to my motion, that the $625,000 comes out of fund balance and that there's money to hire the maintenance person to oversee that project or be there while the project's going on.
Everybody understand the motion? Thank you.
We're
And
going to authorize the county manager to negotiate the contract too, correct?
And
As part of the
and
motion.
And I guess, Carson, in this, I would go to the contractor tomorrow and say, this is all they're going to spend. If you think there's other money in here, another $100,000, you better forget it, buddy.
Right. Well, another thing, and I can appreciate that, I wanted to mention was obviously we're dealing with Triangle Contractors.
I don't care who we're dealing with.
Right.
I don't care.
My point is that they'll at least be putting some of that money back into the local economy.
We hope.
and We understand.
Two more parts to the motion if we want to consider that. Wayne, there's two more parts of that motion if we need to consider that. To negotiate the contract and to reappropriate the money, the
Yeah,
million.
I added that. It's $625,000.
Well, we need to reappropriate the $1,092,000 also from last year
All
to
right.
this year.
All right. Add that to that motion.
and the county manager negotiate the contract.
Right. All right.
I'd like to ask our legal counsel to double sure and double check and visit that contract, make sure what we're talking about is included in the contract.
Yes, sir. County manager and I spent all week on this last one for the 911 center, and we put some heads into the.
Good for you. As usual, you're ahead of us. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Do you understand the motion?
Probably good.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, a like sign.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2, revision of scope of work for Mission Critical Partners, and that'll be presented by Brian Steen, our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We are at a point now, which is somewhat of a surprise to me, that our contractor for the 911 project is actually got people on the site now. I had anticipated doing this at your August meeting. I'm sorry that there was not more time to bring you up to speed on this. But I think I'd mentioned in the past that I was wanting to hire a clerk to the works to oversee this project, to make sure that every step of it is done properly and in conformance with state building code, as well as in our best interest, to make sure that something doesn't get covered up that could be detrimental to the project in the next few years. So what I've done, and I have before you for your consideration, is to expand the scope of work for our Mission Critical Partners, which is our consultant on the project, to also include the provision of a clerk to the works to oversee this work. This would be paid for out of the 911 grant, and we're looking at a price of $85,000 for them to take over the responsibility and to provide that employee. That person, when the project is over with, would just be a contract employee contracted by MCP. They would not be a county employee and available for any kind of county benefits or any kind of unemployment benefits from us when that project is over with. So that is why I'm preferring to go through MCP to handle this for us.
And that's paid for by the 911 funds.
911 grants.
All right.
And this would also be subject to approval by the executive director of the North Carolina State 911 Board.
Okay. Questions on item number 2? Comment?
Mr. Chairman, a motion for approval with the 911 grant funds paying for this service.
Okay.
And authorize the manager to execute the late.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Any other comment or question? Ready to vote? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. 4-1, Madam Clerk. Item number 3, comprehensive digital photographic documentation, and that's also presented by Brian Steen.
Yes, sir. This goes along also with the 911 project. And what this is a service that comes out and takes pictures of the project as it is ongoing to provide you a digital record. And the unique thing about this is they also index it in such a way as it ties back to the actual architectural drawings and provides you an as-built digital record of any changes that are being made. As you go through projects, occasionally you get to points in the project where something doesn't work quite the way the architect originally designed it. And if there is a modification, you want this to record that. In addition to a comprehensive digital record of the building, so that 25, 35 years from now, if they have to do something to that building, especially something of significance, they'll be able to go back and utilize this photographic record so that they know where different things are in the walls or in the floors, and that would hopefully make that project easier, as well as it protects us, I think, as the project goes along. And one of the other parts of this is also that they establish a webcam that continuously provides live feed of the project as it is ongoing, and also records photographs of the job site, which provides me some security service if something were to be removed from the site without authorization. I like that feature particularly in order to try to make sure that we don't have disruptions, because this project will be on a tight time schedule. And if something of significance is stolen and you have to replace that part, that can cause a disruption to the flow of work at the site. And
This again is paid by
911
911 grant funds.
And it was also
questions?
subject to approval by the State 911 Executive Director.
Question or comment from County Commissioner? Is there a cost to that? Cost is not listed. Is there an estimated cost?
Yes, up to $14,000. And what that is, gentlemen, is I don't want to do the night service work until we get to a point in the project where there's actually things there that would be pilferable. I'd just be wasting money if I had the 24-hour coverage from the day they just started moving dirt. So this allows me, probably in the last 4 months of the project, to incorporate 24-hour-a-day coverage with a webcam, we'll have to have the site illuminated. And I'm talking with Duke Power about doing that also.
Okay. Any other question or comment?
Again, Mr. Chairman, a motion to approve, this is a project, again, that'll be used in grant funds, no cost to us.
Excuse me, does that include the sole sourcing?
You've got 1 and 2. Do we need to approve both of those or either or?
Both?
Both.
All right, a motion to approve the sole sourcing for the provision of a comprehensive digital record of construction activities to Malta Vista for construction of the consolidated 911 facility as permitted by NCGS 143129E6. Further authorize the county manager to execute a contract up to $14,000 on behalf of the board, subject to review and or revision by the county attorney and written approval from the state's 911 board executive director.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Oppose? 4-1, Madam Clerk. Item number 4, continuation or termination of contract with CG Emmanuel Group, and that's also presented by our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You may remember a few months back that we engaged Mr. Emanuel as our lobbyist, and in the contract, he was to serve us for 3 months, and that contract would be ending August 7th. But he had also indicated that he would continue to serve us at a cost of $3,000 a month for the remainder of the 12-month period if we so desired. This is before you for your consideration and action. As you know, we still have some state services here in the county that could be subject to changes with the state of North Carolina there at Broughton Hospital and the School for the Deaf. We have somebody there that has established relationships with different legislators and the governor. I don't know, again, where the board is on continuing with Mr. Emanuel or going ahead and discontinuing on our original contract.
Questions or comment from county commissioners?
If it's a contract and it ends on a specific date, is there any reason to vote on it?
Well, it's just whether or not to continue past that date for the amount of $3,000 a month.
Brian, didn't he say when we talked to him the first time that week, if we didn't have him on contract for X amount of time, that we could hire him for different projects, such as if something happened to the deaf school or something like that, that might cost us a few dollars more, but that he would do it that way too?
I believe that's true, yes, sir.
Other question or comment? Brian, do we have any indication from the partners that helped us before if they would help if we accepted or placed him on a yearly contract?
No, I have not had any conversation with Valdez or the State Employees Association for any additional funding, no, sir.
Okay.
Johnny, what is the, on the prison now, what is the official, what's going to happen with the prison?
News Herald reported today, and I think it's pretty obvious that we're not going to be in the budget. So there was one other issue about the minimum custody unit that was controversial, and it may come back up Thursday when they do the technical corrections. I doubt if it does. So inmates are already being moved to other facilities. Some of the officers are taking temporary positions at other institutions because of vacancies there. As much as I'd like to keep Mr. Emanuel, we just spent $500,000 on another project, and I don't know that we need to spend $27,000 more. We may be able to hire him. I'd love to keep him, but I just can't see spending another $27,000.
I guess my feeling would be to go ahead and end this contract, but still use them as projects come up and whatever, and at that time we can negotiate a price with them or a contract with them, and I think that's the way to go.
I think we're kind of between a rock and a hard place right now with what we just did today.
Any other question or comment? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the termination of the contract with Mr. Emanuel or the CG Emanuel Group for professional representation services effective August the 7th, 2013.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. And now, a special presentation by Brian Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, you may be aware of Mr. Graves, and he is going to be going back to Stanley County. And I just want to personally thank him on behalf of the board and also present him with something to remember his days in Burke County. So if you'll step around. Although his experience in Stanley County was the only guy with a lapel pin, we'd like you to remember us a little bit. And this is from my personal thoughts, it's not coming from the county. So make sure nobody misunderstands. It's not county tax dollars paying for that.
That'd be great. When I go to the commission meeting down there, I always spend, I'll take this with me.
Good. How about a great round of applause for that thing?
Mr. Chairman, the truth is, I'm not taking out a job and keep trying to help sleep in the building. I thought somebody would look for him, so that's why.
Chair will accept a motion to adjourn. As long as you remember, we're celebrating Jeff's birthday for a few
Chocolate
minutes.
cake back there, too.
So move.
So moved.
All those in favor can go get a piece of cake.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.